Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this virtual live session. I'm Yasmin Taj, Managing Editor with People Matters, and I will be your host for today. The business value of traditional employee performance management models is collapsing. While these legacy systems still form the basis for decision making around compensation, promotions, terminations, and other compliance mandated functions, they have not made a major impact on actually improving performance or its management. The ongoing change in the way work is done and the kind of performance is expected from an employee has led to the change in the way performance management is perceived. We need a more agile performance management system. Continuing with our endeavor to provide actionable thoughts to our community, People Matters in partnership with Intomo presents this session on the topic Driving Performance Careers in the Enterprises of Tomorrow. A quick housekeeping before we start today's session. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the chat window. We will bring them up towards the end of the session during the 15 minutes that we have reserved for Q&A. So stay tuned to your chat box and keep posting the questions you have for our speakers. And now coming to our speakers for today's session. Joining us today, our first speaker is Jaisli Woon, Chief People Officer, Fujifilm Singapore. Jaisli has extensive experience in transforming HR across Asia Pacific from silo business management to new HR operating models. High influencing skill in driving changes and engaging top business leaders for talent match. Welcome on board, JC. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hi everyone. Good afternoon and probably good morning in a different part of the world. I'm Jaisli Woon from Fujifilm's Business Innovation Singapore. I'm the Chief People Officer responsible for overseeing managing the company's human resource and development as well as corporate social responsibility. Nice to meet you, all of you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, JC, once again. And we also have with us Arun Sundar, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Entomo. Arun leads the global marketing team for the business and operations spread across APAC, EMEA, Europe, and the US. Welcome, Arun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yasmin. Hello, all. Look forward to the conversation.
Great. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the screen to Arun for doing the context setting for this session. So over to you, Arun.
Thank you, Yasmin. So the conversation series today is intended upon one premise, that the enterprise of tomorrow is going to be very different from the enterprise of today or the enterprise of past. Now, that thesis that the enterprise of tomorrow is going to be different has a lot of takers. In fact, almost everyone is a taker. No one begs to differ. Now, having said that, the interesting part is that when you ask the question, what is going to be different in the enterprise of tomorrow, the answers vary across the spectrum, which is a very interesting problem to have. The very fact that we know things are going to be different has been accelerated by what we saw around in the last 2 years. So in this context, one primary thing that needs to be changed from the outset is on how organizations drive their employee performance. Because in the absence of an employee performance, whatever the organization stands for, it will cease to exist. It's a matter of time. And the second thing which has changed in the past decade is the responsibility of careers and skills of employees from the employee to the employer. Now, when you marry these two things, one critical element that comes out is driving performance and driving skill development in the enterprise of tomorrow is going to be very different and much more demanding than what we have seen till date. So that's why we all thought that it's important to have a deliberation and a conversation around this topic. And for that, we thought that one person who could add a lot of value is Jaisli, given the background that she comes from and the background of the organization that she represents in terms of redefining and repurposing themselves in the light of change. So that's the whole context. And back to you, Yasmin.
Thank you, Arun. I think, yes, indeed, it is time to reimagine performance management, how we look at skill development, how we look at learning interventions, how do we look at creating those career paths for our employees. So thank you for setting the context so beautifully. And now we'll just begin our conversation and let's start today. Arun, the first question that I have is for you itself. According to you, what are the elements of enterprises of tomorrow and how will the careers evolve to support these future enterprises?
So Yasmin, as I just mentioned, that the enterprise of tomorrow is going to be different. Yeah, but how is it going to be different? And that difference is something which we already see. So the difference is across all three aspects of an organization. First is what is the unit of work that the organization and the individuals in the organization need to perform. That's going to change. That has started changing, and that's going to change a lot. Second, where do they perform this work from? The workspace. That's changing already in the last 2 years. We have seen that. And the third is who is going to do the work. This third question is even more interesting because even 3-4 years back, if you ask this question, the answer is very simple. Employees of an organization are the ones who are going to do the work. Are they? Is it going to be machines? Is it going to be contractors? Is it going to be third party? Or is it going to be sometimes your own competitors? So work, workplace, and the person who does the work, everything is going to change. Now, if I were to look at the fundamental fabric of that change, there are two things that come to my mind, which I will explain in the further in the due course of the conversation. The first thing is having a digital mindset to all three, whether it is work, workplace, or who is going to do the work. That's got to be very important because digital is still seen as a tool, while it actually has to be a mindset. That's one. The second is a networked view of the organization. In the context of a networked view, in a digital workplace, you will have to reimagine the entire enterprise of tomorrow to encompass many of these factors. So to me, I know it sounds a little cryptic, which you will unravel as time goes, but to me, that is a fundamental change, and that's what we are going to see in the enterprise of tomorrow. Now, an extension of that, to answer the second part of your question, how does careers evolve in the whole thing? That's got to be even more interesting and even more nuanced. In a digital networked workplace, in an extremely dynamic business world, both career and skill has to be as digital, as dynamic, and as willing to change and move at an extraordinary pace unseen before. And there, the responsibility of the enterprises in ensuring that the skills and careers of their employees are taken care is going to be profoundly more than what we saw in the past.
Absolutely, that's very well put together, Arun. I think yes, as you said, a digital network world of work and a dynamic workplace. And how do you look at skills? What is required for your workforce for this kind of a workplace? I think these are going to be some key priorities for CHRs of today. So thanks for sharing that. So Jaisley, I'll come to you now. What are some of the key talent challenges that HR today is facing in keeping up with the enterprise growth today and in the future?
Actually, this is an ongoing challenge for HR. HR exists with these kind of challenges for decades, and we have been constantly working on like how to retain, motivate, and attract talents. Like what Arun says, with the enterprise growth of today and tomorrow, I think as an HR, we need to start to re-examine like how business can adapt to this new world and what are the key battles for it, and the skills and attitude, perhaps what is needed by our leaders to thrive, right? So to me, I think there's three key talent challenges. Number one, which is timely access to the existing skills of the talents. Workforce planning, that focusing on how to ramp up skill gaps, and talent competitions. So perhaps the most critical factors is simply having the right talents and the skill for the new world, like the labor market in the skills that employee now needed, like have forever changed because of this pandemic. Like Arun says, it's become more digitalized. So like one example he says, the rapid digitalizations of operation that itself has occurring in a scale. So this has been a clear area of transformations for many of businesses, and skills required for this, which is what kind of skill required for the future, it become a constant evolving and required time to quickly assess the needs. So for the talent competitions for new skills, so it becomes fierce and also continue to evolve. So this is not just driven by the scarcities of the leaders themselves with the skills, but also the increased competitions and access to the talents has become borderless, right? Especially with the remote working transformations and the nature of the work labor these days. So similarly, the society as a whole needed to move towards greater sustainabilities and the business becoming more purposeful driven. So demand has accelerated for skills, talents. So just like I mentioned about talent competitions, right? So it is also about how quick we know about our people's aspirations and development needs, and how quickly we could act and motivate and entice them. So indeed, we see an evolutions or new skills that evolve from the digital world. As you may know, that more people are getting more self-reliant. They just Googles with the solution and they help themselves and they become more competent. And the shift in the self-initiative learning have evolved and changed as well. So therefore, I think just-in-time learning has become a new buzzword, and the personalized development become an expected delivery also. Sorry. So I think as an HR, we need to think of how to ramp up skills. Sorry, I think I need to drink.
Yeah, please drink water.
So I think as an HR, we need to ramp up the skills gap, which is the ability to provide a quick access to development needs, and perhaps in the olden days where the one size fit all may no longer relevant. So having a robust views like a process of the talents and the talent assessments, or a selections guide or talent development for skill future or succession planning, with the ability to tap on external source or provide workforce intelligence and solution, I think that would be a great tools to address the challenges.
Thanks. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lucy. I think I totally agree with you. I think, yes, identifying the skill gaps and creating programs that can give access to employees to learn on the go at that very moment when the need is required. I think when the need is there, I think that's going to be very important. So thanks. Thanks for sharing that. That's quite a challenge. I think most HR leaders, L&D leaders are kind of grappling with the same challenge right now. How do you kind of face identify the skill gaps and create a workforce that is prepared for the new skills that are in demand today and for tomorrow? So thanks for sharing that. So Arun, how do you think can an organization deliver great performance keeping in mind the never ending uncertainty and disruption brought today?
So to answer that, I think the first thing that I want to explain is where the gap is, right? So in performance management. So I have also often found it very amusing that organizations exist for achieving a larger goal. That goal gets broken down to goals of departments and individuals. So managing those goals is actually end of the day performance management in simple words, right? So end of the day, an organization's most important aspect of existence is ensuring that the performance against goals earmarked happens. Interestingly, that's not done. That is done once a year, and that too parked under a particular department, right? Who will actually initiate a process which needs to be done within a time period. So the most important thing gets parked among the least important things as if it's a ritual. So that is where performance management has been broken. Now the issue has been accelerated by not being able to see employees in action on a day-to-day basis. And you cannot see your employees working as well. So in Asia, typically we have this mindset that, okay, employees need to come on time, they need to leave only at a particular time, and I will look at inputs, how much time are they looking at. Like it or not, that's been the truth till recently. Right? So that got substituted. So the real performance management got substituted to monitoring. The monitoring is also not possible, so which is great. In my opinion, the inability to monitor is amazing, right? Because that gives a lot of empowerment to employees, and the real performance comes out. That is where the widening gap of performance management became even wider. So the way I would, and that is the first issue. The second issue is that performance management is not real time, it's not agile. So the way typically I explain this is, I don't know how many of you have traveled in an Indian train. If you travel in a very long Indian train, there are times when you can see, when you are sitting at the last compartment, you can see your own train's engine moving almost at 90 degrees to you, right? Because the engine has moved long back, the compartments are still moving, right? That's the state of many organizations. Business changes, the leaders decide to change, but by the time the change trickles down, it takes a lot of time. By that time, things have changed, right? So now performance management should actually be locking it. Performance management ideally should be doing two things. One is ensuring that the organizational strategy, operational and people goals are tightly knit at any given point in time, right? Second is that it has to be a continuous process where it is not just about monitoring performance, it is about empowering an employee to perform. For example, some of the modern performance management systems, including what Entomo has, for which we have got some 30 million users in the past few months, is wherein the performance management platform starts providing nudges to employees in the context of their goals. For example, if I'm a salesperson, I should be nudged with insights and information in the context of my goals, right? So that's the second thing. So first is goal alignment. Second is ensuring that it not only monitors performance, it drives performance. So these are the two traits which I believe a modern performance management system should have, which has become profoundly more important with the digital workforce coming in and with the remote working coming
Very well said, Arun. I think the analogy of the train is very, very interesting here. That yes, the business goals move faster than people, and people are just trying to catch up. So how do you bring that thing, and how do you stop monitoring work and start empowering people to work? I think very important point there. I think that's the shift that I think most organizations today have to make, and I think they're trying hard and they're on their way. But that is the most required, shift in the mindset that's required today. So thanks for sharing that. So, JC, what about you? How is your organization working towards delivering great performance and empowering people to thrive in their careers?
You know what? I like the words empowering because
Yes.
in one of my HR's conference interview, I mentioned about our 4E approaches. E1, which is engagement, deepen, deepen teams' connections with the heartfelt trust that we have for them in their best interest in mind, and enable, equip employee with necessary resources, tools, and skill for future's readiness and empowerment. So empowered to build trust with a sense of ownership, with an autonomy to release their full potentials. And therefore, they become energized, the last E, to inspire and motivates the employee to perform their absolute best. So we in FB, which is a Fujifilm's business innovations, we anchored with these four principles that we advocate for. You own your own career. So as an HR or managers, we are just an enablers. We engage our people by building the trust and enable them with various resources so that they feel empowered with autonomy to strive for their own career path. In FB, we adopt a classic 70-20-10 learning framework. So the 70 is about stepping in and stepping up. So which also means that they learn through completing daily tasks, evolving issues, and refining their skill base. And also the 20 will be from the bite-sized learning or social learning and coaching. So of course the last, which is third, the 10 is about formal learnings and ranging from classroom to customized e-learning platform or hand-picked digital resources such as MOOC or linking learning. So in that sense, Fujifilm Business Innovations have moved to address both learning needs and also the hybrid models, where the 10th is an adopted based on the FB cultures from reform learning. So this will give a lot of empowerment to them, that they build their goals, their learning needs, and therefore they find the learning necessary for them to grow and develop. So we believe that as an employer, we have to work out what's really connect employees to their purpose and given them the sense of individual growth and offer some meaningful work that challenge them. And we must also renegotiate it like all the times, having an individual development conversations and create an individual value proposition to move employee engagement to employee thriving. So, because the very natural work is constant changing. And therefore, I think that with personalized systems or driven with empowerment, it will certainly accelerate performance. And ultimately, it is individual based learning pace and their appetites for personal growth.
I think it's very interesting that yes, you give that that power to people to build their own careers the way they want to. As you said, you empower them. You tell them that you own your own careers, and then you help them create their own personalized learning journey. I think because every individual has a separate, a very unique journey when it comes to their own career growth and how they want to work towards it. So I think that's very interesting, personalized, empowered, unique to every individual, and I think that's the way forward for skill development in any organization. So thank you so much for sharing that, JC.
Thank you.
So, JC, another question to you again is: what role can HR play in supporting businesses to be more productive?
My CEO always say,
Yeah,
HR, getting the right people and put them into the right positions. So,
yeah,
when we are able to match the skills and talents and the interest of the people, that's requirement of the job. You don't need to manage them closely and turning the job into their passions, and people will thrive and accountable for it. People who knows how to do the jobs and would want to do it well, and they're likely become a self-starter So like in FPSGs, we reinforce a culture of inwards game, which is trust, respect, team, and pride, like to help the business to be more productive with a constant engagement, ongoing feedback, coaching. It become an imperative things to drive the performance. So nothing less than like having a regular communications that will make a company agile and nimble in a quick reactions to the change and directions. So as an HR, we are the people advocate. So along with the support from the senior leaders and CEO, we run monthly managers coachings across the organization and enables the managers by changing and leading the programs with a growth mindset and to empower employees within the processes. And therefore, when employee have like if employee have to call a supervisor for any small little things, so it can become a brick with the micromanagement and decreased productivity. Therefore, build a work build a worker-based decisions making into the processes where possible, trusting your well-trained leaders and talents to make the right decision and follow up with management as appropriate. That will certainly strive the people and enhance their productivities.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for sharing that. Yes, I think HR has a huge role to play here in setting the right, right tone for how the organization moves forward when it comes to building their people and how do they plan to, balance that business continuity and people by having people at the core of it. So I think that's a very important role. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Arun, how do you think agile performance management is the need of the hour, and how is your organization looking to create a more agile performance management process? This question is both for Arun and JC, but Arun, I'd like you to take it up first.
Right. So agile HR, agile performance management has been the talk of the town for almost a decade, right? So it was you can't miss any conference in any part of the world where these concepts do not are not being analyzed and discussed. Now, having said that, the adoption of that has been very, very low, right? And so there have been a few impediments towards doing that because they were never seen as must-haves. They were seen as a state which we should eventually reach to, right? And the sense of urgency was very low. But in the last 18 months was a real test of resilience and agility of organizations, right? So because the fundamentals changed. When fundamentals changed, are you still able to operate at a pace at which you are supposed to operate? So some organizations actually exceeded that pace. Some organizations could not. We could all see that. We all have personal examples of knowing organizations which could do that and which couldn't. So sitting on the other side of the table as a performance transformation partner to many organizations around the world, we could actually see what makes an organization's performance management systems agile and what makes an organization's performance management stale. There's a very clear demarcation. The demarcation was that performance management has to be seen as a part of a flow of work. Right? If you do not see performance management as a critical fabric in the day-to-day activities, versus if you see that as one ritual that you do once a quarter or once in 6 months or once a year, then there's a see difference. Agility to me, and that's something which was clearly visible, is performance management a fabric of day-to-day activities. Now, when I say that, the first thing that comes to people's mind is, oh, does that mean that I should constantly monitor? And there are even organizations which spoke to us and asked us, is there a way in which you can help me put a spyware into the laptops of my employees and see how many hours are they logging in? That's not performance management. That is actually monitoring, right? And that doesn't help. That goes starkly against what Jasli just mentioned about empowerment, right? So it is about ensuring that performance management is in the fabric of day-to-day operations, which means, for example, nudging, coaching, the conversations, giving a performance consciousness to employees who are sitting at home, not even meeting their colleagues to know how well or how not am I adding to the overall pie. Things like that becomes extremely important. So agility to me, and I know it is a little nuanced, agility to me is about intertwining performance management in the day-to-day work. And that's where technology is extremely essential.
I think that's a very important point. I think, yes, the archaic ways of doing performance management at the end of the year, or maybe some of them started doing it, half yearly. I think even that doesn't work anymore. As you said, it has to be intertwined with the day-to-day work. How are you aligning your work to your goals on a daily basis? And how do you empower your employees to do that instead of monitoring them? So I think that's what agility in performance management means. So thanks for sharing that. JC, what about you? How are you as an organization building an agile performance management process?
Okay, my understanding of agile performance management is a response to a modern dynamic marketplace that demands adaptability and alignment. I think it is also an approach to motivate performance and like nurturing employee development and aligning these two objectives under organization and personal goals. So, in the sense, the an agile approach address the flaws and the limitations inherited from the traditional performance management, and it does away with limits the likelihood of vague or anxiety inducing and biases performance management. So although we are not there yet, but we have taken the steps to build cultures of continuous communication, as we believe that it is paramount to cultivating a meaningful relationships, like building trust that's open up and open dialogue between managers and staff, and it draw attentions to potential problems before they even have a chance to become a harmful productivity issues. So in FB, we run biannual performance management as opposed to the companies that run normally like annual performance cycles. So to us, we take a step forward by introducing a regular check-ins like feedback that promote efficiencies and enabling and also flexibilities with autonomies and ownership, because it gives us an approach of futures oriented, like process driven, that's primed to thrive in the thick of marketplace tumults and also disruptive changes.
That's very important. I think, yes, Jayashree, continuous communication and continuous feedback. That cycle has to be developed, I think, and that's how it'll become agile. It'll become something that you do on a daily basis and don't wait for certain time frames to give feedback or understand what problems people are facing in their work life at that point in time. So very important. I think that's exactly what agility will stand for going forward also. So thanks for sharing that. Arun, you spoke a lot about how technology is going to impact the future of performance management. So, what are some new performance management technologies that can enable organizations to be ready for the future?
So, if you closely look at the performance management space, that's up for substantial disruption, right? And there is clearly there are two camps now, right? One is the traditional historical camps of performance management, all about goal setting and goal review. That's it, right? And that's been there for a long, long time, and it's broken. The other side is a camp where Entomo clearly belongs to, and we are one of the leaders in the pack, right? And wherein most of the other players and peers of us are in the US. So there are hardly 6 or 7 players in the world, wherein our concept of performance management is about doing performance management, the flow of work. So in the flow of work, the first thing is about goal setting, right? And that's where many go wrong. Goal setting is all about ensuring that the organizational goals clearly trickles down to the goals of teams and employees, that it neatly adds up. You'll be surprised to know that there are organizations where all the employees or a substantial number of employees are outstanding performers, but the organization went bankrupt. We all know such examples. Right? That's because the goals are not neatly tied. So that's the first. The second is using nudges. The use of nudges has not been used much, especially in this part of the world, and now it's coming up. So nudge is not about preaching. Nudge is all about giving a gentle idea or a piece of information at the right point in time that will start shaping behaviors, right? And it came from Richard Taylor's famous nudge theory. It is about influencing behaviors, right? So, for example, if a person, right, there's a real life case study of one of our clients, wherein the client was the client sales head in Asia, right? He always had a margin target and a revenue target, and every time the margins of a particular region is about to drop, a nudge comes to him which says that potentially your team in that part of the world needs some coaching or conversation to ensure that the margins do not fall down, right? So intervention at the right time. So there's a machine talking to him real time in the context of what he's supposed to achieve. Or another example from Japan, right? Because I saw a question in one of the audience questions which asked about digital fatigue. So digital fatigue also is not about preaching and telling your employees that there's a digital fatigue, please take rest, take 5-minute break. And to the same employee, you're asking him to achieve a particular goal also, right? That's not the right way to do it. The right way to do is to empower them or give a reflection on a mirror that you have not taken a break in the last 8 hours. You have not taken a leave in the last 20 days or last 2.5 months, right? Things like that. It's called a nudge, a gentle nudge that comes to an employee as well as his or her reporting manager. Taking an action is not something you can preach to your employees. The only thing that you can give them is an empowerment with information, empowerment with insights. So the two broad things that modern performance management systems are doing now is in terms of ensuring that there's a clear goal alignment, which is agile. And the second is ensuring that there are a lot of nudges and insights and AI and behavioral science packed into it so that it shapes performance into a behavior, right? Drives performance as a behavioral trait. So that's what many modern performance management systems are up to these days.
Thanks. I think that that actually proves how technology can, play a great part in enabling the kind of behaviors and performance, that organizations are looking for. As you said, if you can set the process of goal setting right at the very beginning, and then if you use technology to both give those insights, those nudges, as you said, I think that's going to really set the way forward of not monitoring, empowering performance on a day-to-day basis. And it makes it easier for the managers also, right, to know what's happening at their end. They don't have to really, monitor to see what the employee is doing at a particular moment in time. So I think that way technology will play a great role going forward. So thank you so much. JC, the final question that I have for you is, what should be the key components of the new framework of performance management at a time when everybody is talking about collaboration, innovation, business impact, client success, and new skills?
I think a great performance management system is an enabler for employee engagements and how it improving company productivity. Apart from, of course, making sure all the goals are in line with the company's overarching target, it should come from features for consistence of regular feedbacks, moments, and allow manager to spot and address quick problems, and as well as keeping employee motivated and on track. That's encompassing on the collaborations elements. Whereas innovations is about the opportunity to quick react. So that employer and managers identify something unique and they embark onto the journeys together. So that is the innovations. Performance management doesn't just work out frequently on the honest and opens and with effective communications. So matrices are not just a passive measures of progress, but also an active part of the organization or everyday's management. Therefore, a tool that is able to track the progressive status of the metric, that will be a great parameters. And I know that in many high performing company, like supervisor act as a coaches and mentor. So one-on-one session for employees to demonstrate concerns and reinforce good habit at every stage of the career development, that is also critical, because each of the career stage of evolving, it makes an impact to the business. And how the client expectation is how the employees acquiring the necessary skills to provide the services to the customers. So while we spoke about the agile performance process earlier, I think Arun has mentioned quite a lot. The new performance frameworks should be an enablers that support like frequent check-in and allow employee feedback, and then two-way conversationals with prompt, like what Arun says. I like the words nudges for employee in the right direction. I think that is a very in things. And performance review, which is no longer just forcing an employee and managers, like enduring the process that's deliver the expired feedback, like reverse engineering, like, oh, now it's time's out, we have to do appraisal. Let's think back, what have we been doing for the last 6 to 1 year's time? So the kind of things and mindset have evolved and changed, and especially in the new generation, they're expecting instant feedback. How am I doing? How can I progress? Am I in the right track? So in a shift in the mindset, with the help in the tools, that will be greatly comes good hand in hand. So in summary, I think the great performance framework will be encompassing with engagement, continuous feedback with multi-stakeholders, because it is not just one way where your managers coach you and give you feedback, but also the ability to input other stakeholders review so that we can get a real-time performance review cadence and like the constant nudges. I like it so that to keep the goals moving and on track. Yeah, so
Great. I
that's
think that's, yeah.
overarching scope. Mhm.
I think it's very interesting how you summed it up so beautifully, Jaisli. I think yes, engagement it should be the key focus, and of performance management systems, they have to be agile. They have to look at instant feedback, constant feedback, and as you said, from multi stakeholders, very important.
Stakeholder.
And if we can use technology, as Arun has also suggested, to nudge people at the right time to influence the right behaviors and performance, I think that's overall going to create a huge impact on the performance management systems that organizations have today. So thank you so much, Jaisli and Arun. Those were some great insights. We'll now move on to our audience questions. And I can see we have quite a few of them. So let's start with, we have Marita Start who's asked, how can companies synchronize their business and people strategies? I think that's a question every HR leader or every business leader has in their minds. How can you synchronize business and people strategies? Jaisli, would you like to go first with that?
I think synchronized before against the existing skill, like what I mentioned earlier, is an on-time access to employee current skill set and what is required in the marketplace new skill. So that is an important element for us to match these two together. And as opposed to evolving new skill sets, I think that is something that's a lot of stakeholders is asking for. So I believe if tomorrow technology were able to link these two together, that will help tremendously for HR committee and even the expectation of the senior leaders.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Thanks. Arun, you would like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question, and the reason why I say it's a great question is because it sounds like a very fundamental thing to do, but trust me, most organizations don't do that. So that's something which they look at once something has gone wrong, right? So in between, I had mentioned an example of organizations where the people have done really well, but the organization did not, or the organization has done really well, but the people did not. How can that happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's very common, right? And the reason is because of this goal alignment part. So there is a simple framework which I subscribe to, which we have embedded in our product as well, is that every employee in an organization should either own, share, or support the overall goal of the organization. You cannot have even one employee in an organization. It could even be the support staff or even a receptionist, right? Who cannot say that I do not play a role in the overall goal of the organization. That cannot happen. That's why I said organization is a network. It should be as tight as possible in terms of goals. An organization which is a network of goals where each node either owns a sub goal or supports a sub goal or shares a sub goal. That has to be embedded in goal setting. You cannot have independent siloed goals. Right?
Yeah.
If an organization just ensures that, then automatically either the organization together they will achieve the goal or they will fall short of the goal, but there are no anomalies or silos.
Yeah.
So that's a simple framework that we subscribe to.
Yeah.
Let me add on. You know,
Yes.
in FB, how we synchronize is also we start from the business strategies, like because we have MRPs and also this year's priorities. So typically, like HR will always work with CEO, which is myself, and with my CEO. We look at the business strategies, which are the key priorities that we want to strive, and then we segmentize it by the key delivery spot point of the line of business. Then, of course, then we map out which other business have a more accountables for each component and each area to deliver. Then followed by a department level. So because once we have the broader pictures, then the department heads will know that how is their goals linked to the CEO's goal and the company's goal, which is our mid-range plan. Then the department heads will also cascade their plan based on what is these key priorities and break down by team. And what we did is also put in by sub-team, what is the key deliverers, like from strategic to tactical, from tactical to operational. And that's where we say that even down to receptionists, we are able to link up to the line of sight to our CEO's objective. Like simple things like we are saying that customer excellency is something that is important for us. Then because each of the customer excellencies and customer touchpoint, we have a different touchpoint by different department. That's why we look at the different processes by different team to have an measurements like metric. Just like I mentioned, is a metric of the performance to drive the outcome. So that's how we align from organizations down to individual level.
Great. Thanks. Great point. Thanks for sharing that. I'll quickly move on to the next question. Is by Lim Irwin, who says, in the age of smart working, how can we support the new approach to work, which involves a shift in control from employer to employee? I think we did talk a lot about that, about how you have to move from monitoring to empowering. Any additional inputs, Arun or JC, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to take that. So, actually, so I don't necessarily agree with that statement that it has completely shifted from the employee to the employer. While it is largely true, right? It's compared to the years before, it's largely true. And let me explain why I said that. The gone are the days of monitoring, right? And it's all about empowerment. It's all about trust. And if one thing has been exposed very clearly in the last 18 months, it is organizations that actually trust their employees and organizations that do not. Organizations which are resilient enough, organizations which have mechanisms to ensure that the agility of the workforce is only growing with external forces changing. So it was that ways. Last 18 months has been an amazing learning for a lot of organizations. It exposed things which they need to work on. Now, having said that, now that is where when employees are not around, you cannot see the employees. The shift is definitely towards the employees. But there is something else that is shift towards the employer also. So let me explain that. And the Jacelines of the world who are leading people are going to come under immense pressure. And let me explain why Jaceline, why I believe so. Because you look at careers, you look at skills. That careers and skills, the expectation that employees have today, that careers and skills of mine have to be taken care by the organization, right? Because the organization, because I'm central to the organization. If I'm an employee, my skills are central to the organization. Now, if the world around changes, the organization's skill profile has to change. Now, I would not know that. So probably the HR or the learning and development department should initially empower me to develop my skills. What those skills are, even I wouldn't know. You should tell me that, right?
Yes.
So that expectation is increasing. Now, for example, there are technologies, even we at Entomo have those technologies, which is all about looking at an employee and with using AI, telling those employees that for someone of your profile, these are the potential career options, right? And if you were to choose option number 2, these are the skill gaps that you have at this moment in time. And the value of that is substantial. And let me explain why. Coursera, for example, with such an amazing content repository, has a completion rate of 7%, which means 7 people out of 100 people who start a course complete. That's a challenge that even HR leaders have. When they bring in learning technologies and learning modules to employees, people don't use it. Why? Because of the absence of a context. But if you were to present the same learning with a context saying that for you to reach your aspired role, you have to earn these skills, the potential conversion rate, we have calculated that hovers around 80, right? So that context setting now is back to the employer. So that's why I said that I don't completely agree with the fact that everything has shifted to the employee. A lot of shift has come back to the employer.
Interesting, very interesting point there. JC, would you like anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Owen's asking is what I think I've covered here a little bit, but because how we support the new approach, right? I think I mentioned earlier that as an employer, we need to connect employee to their purpose, like give them the sense of individual growth. I think like as an HR or the organizations, we need to understand because individuals' needs are different. So we need to offer them with some challenges or meaningful work that they deem they are empowered to. So by also to have a constant and regular communications with the individual to find out their individual development needs and create an individual value propositions so that we can move the people so that we could empower them and they feel the ownership of their career. So this is how I see the support that we can provide as an organization, as all the leaders to shift the empowerment to the employees to feel that I'm not planning for your career, but I enable you to your career growth.
Yeah, I think connecting them to the purpose. I think very important point there. Thanks, JC, for sharing that. There's another question that I think is very interesting. Koswan has asked, what are some of the top tools or ways you use for continuous communication across levels? And he's requested for examples from both the speakers. So, JC, if you'd like to answer, what are those tools or ways that you are using for continuous communication? Then we'll go on to Arun after that.
Okay, so if you're talking about this too, I would like to also share that just last week, Fujifilm Business Innovation, we just won a strategic HR communications award. So we got a silver. So I think this is a right question for me.
Absolutely.
So in Fujifilm Business Innovation, we did a lot of communications. So and our CEO believe in over communications rather than under communications. So in terms of tools, we use various tools. Various tools meaning like it can be as simple as we encourage. We say that okay, now we all work remotely. Let's and not enforce like we encourage all leaders to have a regular huddles with the team, be individual one-on-one or huddles at the department to make sure that we get to see our people. Okay, that's one. The other one is town hall. So everything is virtual now. So we use
Yes.
town hall meeting for the whole segment department. It can be arranged for 100 people. And another communications is we even have kickoff meeting that we try to divide into like few sessions to engage people. And then we even have fireside chat where the configurations of the communications are different because fireside chat is very much one way. So meaning for the employee to ask the leaders questions. So we solicit all the questions and then we address all the questions in a forums. And then we have a manager comms. Manager comms is where we use to have committees of all the managers, which is about 100 over managers come together. We share with them what is the culture, what is the issues and businesses progress. And we use, of course, the Zoom or even MS Team to communicate, to bring information to the manager so that manager become the people advocacies to help to be the mouth persons to their people so that we all say the same thing with the same flow of thought and same message and cultivate the same culture. So this is how we create a communication structures from one way, two way, anonymous, and even a bigger forums. So
Great.
that's what.
Yeah. Thanks, JC. Some great examples. Arun, what about you? Would you like to share something on that?
So not beyond what Jesli mentioned, because that was outstanding, Jesli. Actually,
Yes.
right? And the reason why I particularly like that is because during the pandemic and especially during the remote, when the remote working increased, one of the biggest issues when you dissect or double click the mental wellness issues of employees is lack of a lack of sense of belonging, right, to the organization that they work for, and sometimes even even a rough email from your boss actually is enough to spoil a day of an employee, right? Because quite often they feel the only point of connection that they have is with their work bosses or work colleagues, and that also can be very rough at times or can be very detached. Right? So that's why communication should be multi-tied and frequent. And the example that Jasli mentioned was outstanding. I think very few organizations are probably as mature to the as I have seen to the extent to which Jasli has managed to do that at Fuji.
Yes,
And I really wish, because that's an extremely critical and important point, and which is going to be much more important in the days to come.
Great, thanks. Yes, and congratulations once again, Jesli, for winning the award. All right. So another question. I think Arun did touch upon a bit on that, but Kini Sang had asked, there's a lot of digital fatigue with hybrid working. How are our speakers addressing this in their respective companies? So, JC, if you could yes, there is a lot of communication, a connect, a lot of that happening. How are you managing digital fatigue now?
Yeah, actually digital fatigue. I think this day a lot of new buzzword is you're on mute. We can't hear you. So yeah, this is quite a digital fatigue. I think in the hybrid wars, we can't run away, but I think to address it is to not just to minimize but to maximize. To how can we maximize communications from individual to a larger scale so that we reduce the frequency. And sometimes if we don't use tools to help the communications. Perhaps we can change the way through WhatsApp, or perhaps call or have a meetup outside. I know that these days there's a lot of lockdown where it's a bit unavoidable, but I think digital fatigue is something that is either you have to deal with it at this stage, or you have to put a stops with a work-life balance. That's what I personally feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yes, Arun. Any thoughts on that? Would you like to
Yeah.
add something? Yeah.
So as I had mentioned before, right, so I'm a strong proponent of not preaching, right, while empowering employees with information, right. So one funny example which came to my mind was one of the largest multinationals in the technology space with whom we are having some good engagements and conversations. We remember it was a funny incident wherein the business leader was very proud of introducing uh, yoga and exercises to his employees and making it mandatory so that their wellness is taken care. And so in between, I got an opportunity to speak to one of their employees, and what I heard was completely other way around. So what she said was that I have tons of work, and in between that, this has come into my list as another work to do, and I really am feeling frustrated here. So,
Yeah.
so that actually it's very eye-opening, that little story. It's because it is not about actually pushing things down the throat. It is rather educating or empowering them or making them conscious to the new world which is digital and the flaws that world has, and why it is important to take care of oneself, and how is it that someone can take care of oneself. I think that empowerment to individuals. And the second thing is the word empathy is really back in business, because leaders need to have that empathy, right? I've known business leaders who say, oh, they are very particular about all their employees coming on video all the time, right? So
Yes.
everyone, so especially in the light of working mothers and when home becomes an office, there are certain things which people are actually rolling multiple things up in the air. So
Yes.
sometimes that empathy and consideration to employees is something which leaders need to have much more in the digital world than in the physical world. At least the office space creates a baseline which is common for all. And these are my 2 cents in that.
Yes, I think that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Also, I think we have time for another one or two questions maximum. So I'll quickly jump onto this. So Sharad has asked, what capabilities and skills are strategically essential to gain and maintain a competitive advantage? So, any thoughts on that, Jaisli?
I think there is no specific capability or skills that are essential. I think it's the mindset. There's so many skills that you cannot just pinpoint on one or two, because even even in the olden days where we have receptionists, these days we don't need. And my receptionist has changed to concierge services. So what kind of capability? Capability has shifted even down to a receptionist level. Even if you look at other functions, they will outsource all their mundane tasks, even their especially in our business, because we are helping business to digitalize their workflow, digitalize their documents. So a lot of things have evolved with the digital's world. So be it your finance, HR, supply chain, all these have changed. Of course, digitalization is a buzzword, but a skill set, I think that essentially we need is a soft skill, because something that we should think about, what systems cannot replace. Maybe
Yes.
at this shortened terms of the foresight that we're seeing. We know that system is a machine learning these days. They learn humans' behavior and know how to react and know how to give you answer. But like what perhaps Arun said, empathy. Probably system at this stage is not able to empathize. They will push information to you as much as you ask. But where
Yes.
else, human being, they knows how emotionals work. I think the EQ versus IQ is going to evolve. And these days, there's coming up with 5Q, even physical quotients, spiritual quotients. There's getting more. So things that if we will look at what are the future skill set, I think the soft skill itself, that's systems that is not able to take on the human the human nature's born emotional states. That's my personal view. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks. Yes, JC, I think that makes a lot of sense. Those, there's nothing like essential skills, but the human skills are what will differentiate humans from machines going forward. So I think that's going to be very important. Thanks for sharing. Arun, what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, my answer is going to be very boring. So before I give my answer, I'll give you a little story actually. Right?
Yes, please.
So years back when I was in B school, right, and I studied in one of the top Indian B schools, and those days economy was extremely vibrant. That everyone has three to five jobs at an average, and so the recruiters who come in, their pitch will be about the industry. Why you should pick up a job in my industry? And I remember this particular individual who was representing a company which used to sell suitcases, right, and they were quite big in India. They're still big in India. I don't want to take the brand name, but everyone knows them. So their national sales head was there, and he said that all these industries, IT, agriculture, all those things have recessions. The only industry which will never have a recession, will never have a problem is suitcases, because people will never ever stop traveling, right? And I'm just hoping to meet him sometime, right, and ask him what happened, right? So the answer to the question which is posed here is that do not take anything for granted.
Yes.
There is nothing which is fundamental which will not change. I know I sound like Buddha, but that's the reality. In reality, it is, right? So like what Jasly said, did we ever think that a receptionist job will become redundant? We all spoke about robots might become receptionists, and then people said no, robots cannot smile so nicely. But now we understand there is no job, no skill which cannot be redundant, right?
Yes.
So keep a constant eye for change, and be always willing to change. I think fundamentals, brass tacks, but the moment you forget one of these two, then your finish is very close.
You'll be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. I think, as you said, change, and how do you adapt to that change? How do you be ready for change, and constantly keep upgrading yourself to that? I think that's a very important point, because change is the only constant. So thanks for sharing that. I think we have time, just about 2 minutes for a final question. So I'll quickly ask that to you, and I'll request you to answer it briefly. Catherine has asked, do you think there will be a shift to flexible workspaces in your respective companies after positive experiences with remote working during the pandemic? So do you want to continue this mode of working, or do you want to come back to what it was before 2020? Any thoughts on that? JC, to you first.
I know that in the market, there's a lot of demand on hybrid workforce. I have okay, if you ask me personally, would you like to work at home or in the office? When I'm at home, I feel that, home is good. But when I'm in office, office is also good. so in the sense that I think what we hate about is the traveling. If we don't have to travel, we can teleport in office. That would be fantastic, because I think the ultimate hassle is just the traveling, because everything stay constant. Because in the office environment, you get to see your colleague, and probably your meeting will be less, because you don't have to schedule to see a person. You just say, hey, go to the persons and then catch up. In home environment, you started to figure out why I got so much meeting, because people don't get to have to make appointment to see you. So it's a hate and love kind of situation in figuring whether should it be hybrid or not. But as an organization, we're still working towards a hybrid plan. Still looking into the flexibility, but of course we also depend on the legislation and government guideline, and whether or not can we go back to office. As much as possible, I think go back to office to see face, that will be that will bring the bonding, and that will also bring that sense of closeness, and you tend to have a lunch chat. Here, my colleague is my husband, my lunch mate is my children. It's like every day, in there 24 hours, so you don't get to see someone else. So the hybrid work it probably will be interesting to go, but if it's going to be permanent working from home, I don't think it's going to be healthy.
We all miss that connect of catching up with colleagues and having lunches together, talking, sharing things. Great, thanks for sharing the journey. Arun, your final words, please.
My final words are just three. So I think office spaces will move into places for ideation, socialization, and isolation. Right? Ideation, because ideation is done best when you meet people in person. Socialization, obviously, for the lunches that you mentioned. And isolation, when Jasly wants to isolate herself from the family to have lunch with somebody else, she would definitely want to go there. And so these three will become the reasons for people to go to office. And that has an economic value also for the organization. So in future, I think we'll have a lot of satellite offices which are meant for ideation, socialization, and isolation.
I love those words. I think ideation, socialization, and sorry, what was the
Isolation.
third one?
The isolation.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. On that note, I think that was all the time we had for this session. It was so amazing listening to both of you. Such interesting insights. Thank you so much, Jaisli and Arun, for sharing these invaluable insights with us. A lot of learning for sure for the audience. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thanks, Arun.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks to all the participants. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye. Thank you so much. And with this, we close today's session. It has been a pleasure hosting you all. Do stay tuned to your inbox for details on our upcoming events and virtual learning sessions. Have a great day, everyone, and please stay safe. Thank you and bye-bye.